Here in the city, shrouded in smoke, 10 million people this morning awoke to a future of cancer, industrial disease. So let's build some more suburbs and buy SUVs. Cut down the mountains, burn all the coal, and put all the money in a humongous bowl. They'll call it progress and they'll blame it on you to end life as we know it, to enrich the few. I'm talking to you from here at the end of the world.
Our life, for sure, First Nation people, the life for the price of the oil they're taking out of our land here. They spoil, they ruin our water, the air, pretty much everything else, the animals, the berries, all our livelihood. That's what we used to live on, the fish, everything. We can't, there's no more, we can't eat fish from the river, we can't drink the water, we get sick from all that pollution, people are getting sick, and people are dying of cancer, whereas there never used to be like that since the plants. And I'm sure I can, I'm just, I'm very positive there that this has got something to do with the air and the water. The pollution is doing something to our people. All these young people are dying at young age with cancer, and it's just something unbelievable. It's been really bad since, especially after they put the other plant there. Because it wasn't it was bad enough when they just had the one plant. Now they put two of them there side by side. Now it's worse, because now we're getting all that sulfur, and all that stuff from the stacks. They say there's hundreds of kind of chemicals coming out of that stack, and it's all toxic, deadly poison. So I blame that on people being sick.
I think to start off with, you have to look at the effects of climate, which have not been considered in any of the oil sands approvals. In fact, both the Alberta government and the Energy and Utilities Board have refused to consider that climate is changing. But what's been happening is that evaporation and the loss from trees, called transpiration, have been going up as temperature goes up. And as a rule of thumb, places on the Athabasca River have had a warming already of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius as an annual average, and much more than that in the wintertime, with big losses of snowpacks. So the effect has been roughly like having an invisible oil sands plant added to that river every 2 years.
Ruining the land, and the pollution around here is just like ridiculous. Like, it's scary. Like, it's just the tip of the iceberg, like with Syncrude and Suncor and Albion across the river, and they have Aurora just to the north of that. And then after that, they haven't even started they broke ground at Petro-Cat. And then we have on this side of the river, we have CNRL and Deer Creek who are going to do some open pit mining too. And we're totally surrounded.
So a lot of the applications that have been approved in the very recent year, in the last 6 months, a year, or in the last 3 to 5 years, much of those operations are just now being constructed, or are maybe 1 or 2 others, aside from Syncrude and Suncor, are fully operational.
We must have about 30 plants around here surrounding us. We're surrounded by plants. Oh yeah, every which direction, they're all around us. They're all around us. And there's two up above us here. Those are the worst ones. They're the worst polluters. They are really bad.
Which two are those?
That's Syncrude, Suncor. They're the worst ones. Because they're so close to us too. I mean, the other ones are close too, but they're using steam, so it's not as they don't have stacks and like they have here at these two plants.
If we had a map, and you can just see like in the last 30-40 years that since Suncor first started, and then they have Syncrude now, and they're two massive projects, and they have offshoots of these things here, whereas Suncor, they're gone across the river and they started their Suncor fire bag, and that's just huge too. That's SAGD, where they go underneath the ground and pump it back up. But like these open pit mines, it's like Suncor, Syncrude. I mean, it's just like what they've done in the last 30-40 years is just shocking. I hate to use that word shocking, but it is, because like the people that, like I live here, and I know, and you can just look over, if you could just look behind you and see Syncrude, that's just like, that's what you could see. That's not like at night we call it Stinkrude. It's not Syncrude, it's Stinkrude. And that's the same thing with Suncor. And because under the cover of darkness, they let out all their like major pollutants at night, That's what they do, because I know, because I worked here for 10 years. And I worked a lot of shift work there, and I used to watch that. Because I know when it's dark, that's when they let all that shit go.
The impacts are enormous. I mean, they're astronomical in my estimation, and I think the destruction to the land, the environment, the pollution to the water, and so on, is probably on a scale that is probably larger than we've ever seen anywhere in the world. So fundamentally, from a treaty rights de facto extinguishment of our rights by government not consulting us, to the environmental impacts, the degradation to the land that we're seeing, to the issues of water, not only quality of water as an issue as far as environmental impacts from the multitude of oil sands projects, but also the quantity of water, because in order to produce a barrel of crude oil, as an example, requires anywhere from 3 to 5 barrels of water. So it's very water intensive as far as producing crude oil.
Well, with respect to damage due to climate warming, Alberta's ground zero. A lot of this area had higher evaporation in the 20th century than it did precipitation. You think, how can that happen? Well, the saving grace has been the water that flows out of the Rocky Mountains, both on the surface in the form of rivers and underground as aquifers. The only reason we have developments like Calgary and Medicine Hat are because of that water from the water towers of the Rockies. That water's drying up. Midsummer glaciers supply an important part, and the glaciers are melting away. They're 25 to 50% gone, depending on which glacier. We're getting less snowpack in the foothills. More of that is falling as rain during the winter. We're having more midwinter melt, so more of it seeps away during the winter season when we don't need it. So we have some big problems developing here. Two other things on top of that. Number one, I mentioned this was the 20th century pattern. We know from recent work the 20th century was unusually wet, perhaps the wettest century in the last 20 centuries. So if we have a return to the conditions that were here on the prairies in most earlier centuries, we'll probably have droughts that last from 1 to 4 decades. Well, any farmer will tell you that it was pretty borderline for agriculture here in the 20th century, and a good part of the province had to rely on irrigation water. If we get a return to those earlier conditions with the effects of climate change and with the high population and industrial growth that we have here, we have the makings of a perfect storm for effects on water.
Every river is threatened by from downstream from the oil sands plant. Not every river, because the Athabasca River flows into Lake Athabasca and it goes out to all the other rivers too, and it goes downstream from here. So every river is being affected that comes out of the delta.
When you went back to college to get another PhD, or you went into the studio to record one more CD, did it occur to you that your time might be spent better digging in the earth or learning to knit a sweater? Did you prepare for all the changes, or at least pretend to try in the years before the oil wells ran dry? When the cars and planes stopped running and the dollar hit the floor and the hordes of hungry children were knocking on your door, when unemployed men in the streets said blame the Arabs for our plight, did you shout with dirt held high, farmers of the world unite? Did you ride an ox into town, say join the green revolution or die in the years before the oil wells ran dry?
Right now, since records started being kept about 50 years ago, the flow of the Athabasca during the summer 4 months, May through August, has declined by about 30%. So on top of that, then we have the tar sands impacts.
And after I went to that conference in Athabasca, and when I found out that one of the tailing ponds are leaking, then I thought, oh my God, this is really crucial, because, down the river from us, people are living for a chip, that community's bigger than ours, and people are dying like flies over there from cancer too, because all the water from here is all this toxic stuff is going to Fort Chip. And their water intake from water treatment plant is right on the Athabasca River. That's where they take their water from. So they consume that water, and I'm sure that's why those people people are dying of cancer.
That's the island right here, and they put a dike over it. Right on the edge of the shore, like the edge of the bank or whatever you'd call it.
Okay.
So right to the other end over there. This is a big island, So we used to hunt there inside. So that's our hunting ground, So now it's closed off now. That's what I was trying to tell you. This dike over here, it's 160 some feet when I was working at Suncor at the time. But I don't know the depth now, so I can't say, because they built this dike up. So I can't say how deep it is. But when I was here, it was 160 feet deep, right where the channel runs, inside the island. So it was 160 feet.
Well, my big concern, of course, would be if one of those big ponds would ever fail. The dikes, as you know, are number 1 or 2 in the world in terms of the size of an earthen dam. And what if we got a 5 or 10 inch rainfall event, which occasionally happens? What if we had a minor earthquake or earth shift? We know that the earth is shifting in all parts of Canada, some more slowly, some more rapidly. You could envision one of those dikes failing. If that were the case, and any significant amount of that pond were to discharge into the river, it would wipe things out for a good distance downstream.
another scenario is like an earthquake, which we had a few years ago. You know, that happened in Alaska, and we felt the tremors up here. And they could, and if it's strong enough, they could break one of those dams. Well, you see in Suncor how close it is to the
toxic ponds and all
the
that.
toxic ponds area. That they could break. And I mean, but that's just something that, like I tell people, like,
Well, there's all kinds of sicknesses going on, like polio and stuff like that are coming back. Lupus, uncommon diseases, rare cancers and stuff like that people are coming up with.
And when we ask them these questions, like how much of pollution is going up in the air, and how much, how much toxic is going into Athabasca River or whatever, you ask questions like that, and they kind of ignore us, kind of, and change the subject, or they'll say, well, there's very little, very, very little, just a tiny bit, just a little bit. That's all they'll say to us, nothing else. They won't talk about it. They don't even want to talk about it.
Those ponds are acutely toxic material, so they would affect things probably well down the Athabasca and into the Slave, and perhaps beyond the Slave Delta. So I think that's my first concern. But the second is, we know that those dikes do seep some material. They try to catch it at the bottom and pump it back over the top. I don't know what percentage efficiency they have, but very few things are 100% efficiency. You have to wonder, as a taxpayer, once the companies have scrammed, who's going to look after those pumps and making sure those tailings pond dikes are intact. And there are stories, I don't know about the rates or so on, that those dikes are slowly creeping, which makes sense. There's a lot of pressure on those. There's a huge depth of water behind them.
The community is currently observing a lot of health issues, human health and animal health. We're looking, and a doctor who's worked in our community for several years has observed that there are very rare cancers being found in our people, blood disorders like lupus, leukemia, and our people are dying as a result. Things that he would suggest that you'd find in one in so many 100,000s.
I'm John O'Connor. I'm a family doctor based in Fort McMurray. I've been coming to Fort Chip for the last few years, and have been documenting what amounts to clusters of illness that concern me and the population south of here. The media got hold of it last year from concerns expressed by non-Aboriginal long-term residents of Fort McMurray, and it's sort of snowballed from there. There is great concern about the health of this community.
When the elders say that before, in the 70s and stuff like that, people weren't sick like they are now. And that's when all the oil sands start developing and the uranium mining and everything too. So.
Is there a uranium mine operating nearby?
No, but there will be. They have plans to start a uranium mine 15 kilometers from our reserve. So, and that's coming down on the Mabel River, which flows into Richardson Lake.
Some of the shallow lakes in the Delta area, which are important spawning habitats for things like walleye, will not be connected, so that there will be whole spawning areas that will be cut off. We know that there are spots like Richardson Lake where just a few centimeters of change in water level mean the difference between fish being able to spawn, or for the fry that develop to be able to get back in the river, or not.
Well, we have concerns about the animals and stuff like that. You have the ones that live off the waters, and like the moose. People in this area, about 78% of them live off the land still because of the high cost of living here in Fort Chip. So.
Also, if you look at the incidence of these bile duct cancers that John O'Connor has identified, those are very, very rare. And 5 cases in a community of 1,500 people or whatever it is certainly well outside the bounds of what you'd expect. Now, maybe it's natural. And you can pull out a coin and flip it. And if you flip enough times, you can flip 5 heads in a row. But it's certainly far enough outside of normal confidence limits that it ought to be grounds for a more detailed investigation, which is what he's been calling for.
There have been several different types of cancer, as well as what we call autoimmune diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, various skin rashes. The cancerous diseases have been the biggest concern, and one of them has occurred here at a rate that's far higher than what we are taught to expect. 1 in 100,000, and we've had 2 tissue biopsy confirmed cases of this disease, cholangiocarcinoma, and possibly another 3 or 4 that didn't actually get to tissue biopsy diagnosis. In a population of between 750 and 1,200, very unexpected.
We had no problems. People only died of old age in our days. Very seldom. Maybe baby odd now and then, but but other than that, we had few deaths, very few, maybe far between, maybe 5 years, 1 person, maybe 10 years. But now it's just right and left. Young people, 37, 34, 43, their 40s, early 50s, people are dying here. I don't know how many people are dying right now. All of cancer. And it's got to be something it's got something to do with this plant. I'm sure of it myself, because I've been here all my life, and I know in our days that's not the way it was. We never seen anything like that. We never ever seen anything like it.
"3 miles to the gallon, all the way to the shopping mall. How to say fuck you to the Kyoto Protocol. The only thing it's missing is a machine gun turret, but it still looks to me like a military target. It's another Hummer humming down the highway."
Some moose have been reported that there's spots inside them. I haven't seen it, but then there's some of them saying that they won't eat the moose meat anymore. Different taste in the meat and stuff like that. Some fish have different growths on them, like they weren't there before. Pusses or something going out from the side of them, or gills or stuff like that's deformed some of them.
As a fisherman, you very seldom see a deformity in natural fish populations. There are sites where a lot of them have been seen before. Below toxic sites in the Great Lakes, high incidence of deformities and skin cancers on the fish, and lip cancers known as papillomas and things have been observed there. So it is very likely to be a warning sign of increased concentrations of pollutants.
This is just not little things, it's big things, because it's the lives of our kids. We're talking about water here. That's life. If you got no water, there's no life. You got no food, how they're going to live. After they take all the oil out of this place, what is it going to look like? And what our kids are going to live on, our near future, like my great-great-grandchildren and so on, But it'll never be the same. Our lives will never be the same. It's ruined completely. Everything is ruined. Our lives are ruined. Our lands are ruined. Our water, the air, everything. Everything's nothing is good anymore. Everything is. The oil companies have ruined everything for us. everything. Our culture, way of life, our children are just, they're not the same like it used to be.
Anything fundamentally from what we see as de facto extinguishment of our treaty rights because government continues to take up land without any consideration or consultation with the First Nation. Because we have a treaty, it compels the government to legally, it obligates them to legally consult with the First Nation anytime there's a potential or adverse impact on their treaty rights to hunt, fish, trap, and so on.
The Northern River Basin study, which was a collection of people throughout the basins, First Nations chiefs, mayors, representatives of pulp mills, and so on, concluded and recommended that a detailed health study needed to be done of the Fort Chipewyan community. That health study has never been done, even though we're approaching 10 years after those recommendations were made.
I've asked for a baseline health study to be done in the community. This has been asked for before. I think if the population south of Fort Chip is concerned about the health of this community, I would expect that further calls or pressure, I guess, for such a study to be done will result in this happening and will shed much needed light on what is going on here.
You know, most of people, half the people in Fort MacKay are sick. They are sick, totally sick. They can't, most of them can't even work because they're sick. And they never been sick like that before oil companies. We never were sick. I mean, not just, you know, but there lots, most of the people are, most of the people here are sick. And I blame that on oil companies because of the plants.
I think there's a real systemic discriminating way of approaching First Nations rights issues by governments. I mean, historically, they attempted to colonize us through policies and legislation that are paternal, colonial, imperial, discriminating. And they continue that attitude in other subtle ways, whether it's their current policy on First Nations consultation, which is unconstitutional in our estimation, or just by simply not dealing with us as priority rights holders of these lands that they continue to mine.
It's money, right? Their almighty dollar comes first. You know, that's pretty sad. You can't drink oil to live. You know, you can't eat money to live. Without water, we can't live. Without animals and that, we can't live. What are we gonna eat? You know, like, especially like us native people, we're used to wild meat. You know, we live on wild meat all our lives. You know, we depended on fish and moose and all that. Now we can't even eat fish. When one eat fish, gotta buy canned salmon or go store and buy some, right? So anyway, you know, it's pretty sad.
But here we're living in a G8 country, fully developed, one of the most advanced countries as far as quality of life, and as Indigenous people, we're still fighting for our existence.
Most Canadians, I think, have been bamboozled by the claim that we're Canada, we have more water than anywhere in the world. And that really isn't true. The true measure of sustainable water that's available for use is what runs off the land. When you look at annual runoff, we have almost exactly the same amount of sustainable water as the US or as China, both of which are being held up as countries that don't have enough water. We have about 50% less water than the Soviet Union and 100% less water than Brazil does. So we shouldn't be deluded by the fact that there's lots of lakes out on the landscape that have water in them. What you want to look at is the percent of water that's renewed each year. And as a rule of thumb, for a good part of Canada, it's 1%. And that's what we have to work with.
They reclaim the land, they said, but there's nothing there that they reclaim. I can't see anything that, I mean, they got a little bit, they got some trees from Germany, and it's not local trees what we used to have. Now you go to Albion Sands and down all the other plants, like you say, it looks like a desert. And you're right. There's not even the one stick standing up. That's all you see is sand as far as your eyes could see. They even had a small tornado there last year. Yeah. I know we've never seen anything like that in our lives. And I mean, I'll be 68 years old here. I've never seen anything like it. You know? So there is a big change. There's definitely a big change.
It was like a competition to see how big everything could get, from the highways to the strip malls to the giant TV sets, from the Moabs to the drag lines, monster trucks and SUVs, and the massive roaring chainsaws that cut down all the trees. That's how it was at the end of the age of oil.
Well, we know where the oil's being sent here to the United States, and we're pretty much feeding the Gulf War of what's happening in the Middle East throughout whatever the United States is doing. And the way the Canadian government right now is working with the U.S. government, they're pretty much hand in hand right now, and the province of Alberta is right in there like a wet sock.
There's a lot of awareness being generated in the United States by environmental organizations down there to Americans generally, because the primary investor in the oil sands right now is more than 50% coming from the United States. So they raise awareness to Americans generally by virtue of looking at the oil sands as their silver bullet to their energy crisis that they're always in. Is essentially having very devastating effects on our people as Indigenous people, and in worst case scenarios, it's leading to premature deaths of our people.
I would like to let them know the way we're being treated here. We're not treated like humans. We're nothing because the money comes first. Our lives don't mean anything to them, to the oil companies. At the cost of our lives, they're getting money. As long as they get their money, they don't care how many of us they kill off. That's the way I feel.
There's hope in the young people. Yeah, they are getting concerned and stuff like that. Some of them don't even want to go work in the oil sands because of the health concerns that they have.
I'm scared, like, for my grandchildren. Or, like, are they going to even have a place to stay when they grow up, you know? I have 3 grandchildren now, and their children. There'll be nothing here for them. It's very alarming. The government just don't really gives a shit about us, you know.
There's a lot of things that's going on out around this region here that people are not aware of, and for them to come around this area, then to see the impacts and the magnitude of the oil sands development will open their eyes, and then finally start to realize that the way the media is being performed to them and not telling the whole truth about what's really happening around this area, and you know, there's a lot of scrutiny going on and stuff like that. So we know for a fact that government is all involved with the media, and there's always censors that they can't report and stuff like that. So they always have a whistleblower, but then to what extent, I don't know.
We will build a new world without the corporate elite. We will see the day of their international defeat. We'll have self-determination and equality for all. For what choice do we really have but to rise up and see them fall? We'll shut them down. We'll shut them down. We will shut them down. We'll shut them down. We'll shut them down. We will shut them down.
If you have access to the internet, Google for chip and illness. I guess be aware of the possible origins of what's happening here until they are elucidated, and support is needed. This is a community that's in a pristine location. I don't believe they should have the illnesses that they're having in this community, and there are just many questions that need to be answered, but support is much appreciated and badly needed.
I think probably the safest thing for Fort Chip would be to immediately install a drinking water plant that used reverse osmosis that would get rid of all of these things. And then simultaneously with that, launch some toxicological work on some of these compounds to see whether there was a likelihood that some of these individual compounds, either via drinking water or contamination of the foods that community still relies on, are responsible.
Because of the money, you know, that they're getting out of the oil, they'll do anything. They don't care if they kill us all off. Who cares? They don't give a damn. As long as they get their money, who cares? The oil companies don't care. I told them right, I met with them lots of times, and I told them that exactly what I'm saying now.
If we don't have land and we don't have anywhere to carry out our traditional lifestyle, we lose who we are as a people, as a culture. We lose our traditions and so on. So if there's no more land, it's by virtue of that, it's pretty much equivalent to genocide, in our estimation, genocide of a people.
Aski. That means they spoil our country.
Standing here on a highway turned into a lake, born on this planet that I didn't make. The ice caps are melting, you can measure the rise of the poisoned oceans, hear all the lies of the political pundits and corporate crooks, their accountants and scientists cooking the books with hardly an inkling of what it's about. Wedded to profit and flooding in drought, I'm talking to you from here at the end of the world. Standing here on the bayou amidst mountains of soil, washed up farmland covered in oil, 1 ton every acre, lost every year, and along with the pesticides it ends up right here. Millions of miles of chemical wheat, challenging all to try to compete and lay waste to your country like we've done to ours. Let them eat coffee, sugar, cocoa, and flowers. I'm talking to you from here at the end of the world.